The clock on the cafe wall ticked softly, each second pulling the day closer to sunset. The faint hum of conversation blended with the gentle clinking of coffee cups and the hiss of the espresso machine. Outside, the city pulsed with life, people rushing home, taxis honking, and the smell of rain in the cool November air. At a small table by the window sat Emma Carter, her fingers curled around a chipped coffee cup. The steam had long faded, but she kept holding it, as if it might warm more than her hands, perhaps her tired heart too. Her hospital uniform was folded neatly beside her, her hair still tied up in the messy bun she wore during shifts. She had just finished a 12-hour day working in the cafeteria of St. Mary's Hospital, serving meals to doctors and patients while pushing away her own exhaustion. Her back ached, her eyes were heavy, but she couldn't go home yet. For a few minutes each evening, she came here, to this little cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, to remind herself that she was still more than just a tired worker, more than just a struggling mother. Her eyes drifted to the silver bracelet in her hand, small, plastic, with faded letters engraved across it. Greater than Noah Blake, Pediatric Cardiology, St. Mary's Hospital. She ran her thumb across the letters, her throat tightening. The bracelet belonged to her son, Noah, her whole world. The one who'd come into her life when everyone else walked out. 6 years ago, she had been young, scared, and deeply in love. She could still picture his face, Ethan Blake, with his confident smile and calm gray eyes. He had been everything she wasn't, ambitious, certain, unafraid. He told her he loved her, that nothing would come between them. But when she told him she was pregnant, everything changed. She never knew what scared him away. The pressure, the responsibility, or maybe the fear of his own family's expectations. He disappeared without a word. No calls, no messages, no explanation. And yet, she never changed her son's last name. Maybe because part of her still wanted her boy to have something of him, something to remind her that once, love had been real. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her back from her thoughts. She smiled as she answered, hearing the cheerful voice on the other end. "Mommy, when are you coming home?" It was Noah, her little sunshine, always full of questions. "In a bit, sweetheart," she said softly. "Did you eat dinner?" "Mrs. Green made spaghetti. I saved you some," he giggled. Emma's chest ached with warmth. "You're the best," she said, smiling. "I'll be home soon, promise." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her purse. Her coffee was cold, but she didn't mind. She placed a few wrinkled bills on the table, gathered her things, and hurried toward the door. But in her rush, the bracelet, Noah's hospital tag, slipped quietly from her bag and fell beneath the chair. Outside, the sky was beginning to drizzle. Emma clutched her worn jacket tighter around her and hurried to the bus stop, unaware that a small piece of her world was still lying behind, waiting to be found. Inside the cafe, a few minutes later, the door opened again. The bell above it chimed softly as a tall man stepped in. His presence drew attention, not because of arrogance, but because of quiet authority. Ethan Blake, CEO of Blake Pharmaceuticals, had built an empire from nothing. To the world, he was a success story, a visionary, a leader, the kind of man who always seemed in control. But tonight, he looked tired, the kind of tired that came not from work, but from loneliness. He had just come from a meeting across town, and his driver had dropped him here at his request. He wanted a moment away from boardrooms, reporters, and endless contracts. As he ordered his usual black coffee, his gaze wandered to the window seat, to the very table where Emma had been sitting minutes earlier. Something on the floor caught the light, glinting faintly. He bent down and picked it up, a small hospital bracelet. The name engraved on it made his hand still. Greater than Noah Blake, Pediatric Cardiology, St. Mary's Hospital. His heart gave a violent thump. Blake, his own name. A strange dizziness washed over him. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. He read the name again, slower this time, as if trying to make sense of what his eyes were seeing. Noah Blake. His mind flashed back. 6 years ago, a small apartment, a crying argument, a goodbye he never meant to say. And Emma, her tearful eyes, the last message he never answered. Could it be? He remembered her working at a hospital back then, just as she said she would. Street. Mary's, she'd told him once. The same hospital on the bracelet. He felt his stomach twist. What if the boy was his? He sat down, gripping the bracelet tightly. His thoughts churned, memories flooding back. The day he left, he hadn't wanted to. His father had cornered him, furious about the pregnancy, about how it would ruin the Blake name. Ethan had been young and stupid, desperate to please a man who had never once shown him love. When he tried to contact Emma weeks later, her number was disconnected. Letters came back unopened. His father told him she'd moved on, left the city. And Ethan had believed him. Until now. The bracelet trembled in his hand. Noah Blake. The boy carried his last name, which meant she hadn't forgotten him. Not completely. His chest ached with something sharp and electric. Guilt, hope, disbelief. The barista called out, "Sir, your coffee's ready." But he didn't move. Instead, he stood abruptly, scanning the cafe, looking for any sign of her. But she was gone, just a fading memory of soft hair and a quiet smile. He turned toward the door, slipping the bracelet into his pocket. He needed to know. For 6 years, he'd buried the past, convincing himself it was too late, that she'd never forgive him. But if that little boy was his, then everything was about to change. Outside, the rain had turned heavier, streaking down the glass and blurring the city lights. Ethan stepped into the night, heart pounding, the bracelet clutched in his hand. He didn't know where to begin, but one thing was certain. He would find Emma. He would find the truth. And this time, he would never run again. The knock came just as Emma was folding Noah's tiny shirts into a worn wicker basket. It was late, almost 9 p.m., and the city outside was hushed, the faint hum of traffic mixing with the sound of rain against the windows. She frowned, setting the basket aside. Mrs. Green, the elderly neighbor who helped with Noah, never visited this late. Her heart gave a nervous flutter as she wiped her hands on her apron and moved to the door. When she opened it, her breath caught. Ethan Blake stood on her doorstep. For a long second, she couldn't move. The sight of him, tall, composed, with that same piercing gray gaze, sent 1,000 buried emotions crashing through her. "Ethan," she whispered, barely believing it. He looked as though he'd rehearsed this moment 100 times but still wasn't ready. His voice was low, uncertain. "Hi, Emma." She stared at him, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. After 6 years, after all the nights she'd cursed his name and cried herself to sleep, here he was, flesh and blood, standing in the same hallway where her son slept peacefully in the next room. Her first instinct was to shut the door. But then she noticed what he was holding. The hospital bracelet. "I believe this belongs to you," he said softly, holding it out. Her eyes widened. "Where did you?" "You left it at a cafe," he said. "I found it. And when I read the name," his voice broke slightly. "Emma, I saw the last name. Blake. I had to come." Her stomach tightened. She took the bracelet from his hand, her fingers brushing his briefly, and for a moment, time froze. Then reality returned, heavy and sharp. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly, stepping back. "You gave up that right a long time ago." He nodded slowly, accepting the blow. "I know, and I deserve that, but please, let me explain." Something in his tone stopped her. The Ethan she remembered had always been sure of himself, arrogant even, but the man standing before her looked different, humbled, remorseful. Tired. Wordlessly, she stepped aside. "Come in. The small apartment was dimly lit, cozy in its simplicity. A few toys were scattered on the rug, and crayon drawings decorated the fridge. On one wall hung a child's sketch of 3 stick figures, a woman, a boy, and a tall man with gray hair labeled Daddy. Ethan's chest tightened at the sight. "He draws you sometimes," Emma said quietly, following his gaze. "He asks about his dad. I told him you were brave. That's all I could give him." He swallowed hard. "I don't deserve that kindness." Emma folded her arms. "Then why are you here, Ethan?" "To ease your guilt." He shook his head. "To tell you the truth." She said nothing, but her eyes searched his face. "I didn't leave you," he said finally, his voice trembling. "My father. He found out about the pregnancy. He went behind my back, intercepted your letters, told me you'd moved abroad. He made sure I could never reach you. I was young and stupid enough to believe him. Emma's eyes widened, disbelief and pain mixing in her expression. You're saying your father? Yes. He nodded. He wanted me to focus on the company, on the Blake legacy. He told me you wanted nothing to do with me. By the time I learned the truth, years had passed. And by then, I thought, it was too late. Emma turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. All those nights I waited, all those months I begged myself to stop hoping. He stepped closer. I never stopped thinking about you, Emma. Or the baby. When I saw that bracelet today, I felt like the world stopped turning. Her voice broke. You missed everything, Ethan. His first steps, his first words, his surgeries. Surgeries. He froze. What surgeries? Emma looked at him then. Really looked, and saw the genuine worry in his eyes. Noah was born with a congenital heart defect, she said quietly. He's had 2 operations already. We still go for checkups every month. Ethan's face went pale. My God. He sank into the nearest chair, running a hand through his hair. Emma, why didn't you? Why didn't I what? She interrupted bitterly. Call you. Hunt you down. You vanished, Ethan. I had a newborn who couldn't breathe without tubes. I didn't have the luxury of chasing ghosts. Silence filled the room. The only sound was the soft hum of the heater and the distant patter of rain. Then, softly, Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek business card. He placed it on the table. My company funds pediatric research and heart treatment programs, he said. Let me help him, please. Not as a CEO, as his father. Emma stared at the card for a long time. She had spent years surviving on part-time jobs, scraping together hospital bills, praying every night that Noah would stay healthy. And now, the man who'd once broken her heart was offering to step back into their lives. Before she could respond, a small voice interrupted. Mommy. They both turned. In the hallway stood a sleepy little boy in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. His messy brown hair stuck up in every direction, and when he looked at Ethan, it was like looking at a reflection, the same gray eyes, the same slight frown. Who's that? Noah asked curiously. Emma knelt beside him, her heart racing. Sweetheart, this is someone very special. Ethan crouched down, his voice trembling. Hey, buddy, I'm your dad. Noah blinked, tilting his head. My dad. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, I didn't know where you were, but I do now. And I'm never going away again. For a long moment, the little boy just stared. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, that bright, innocent smile that could melt even the hardest heart. Mommy said my dad was brave, he said simply. You look brave. Ethan's throat tightened. He reached out, his hands shaking, and Noah climbed into his arms as if he'd known him forever. Emma pressed a hand to her chest, tears spilling freely now. For the first time in years, the emptiness inside her began to fill, not with anger, but with something fragile and real, hope. Ethan held his son close, whispering softly, I missed you so much, even before I knew you. The room felt warmer, brighter somehow. The rain outside had softened to a drizzle, tapping gently against the windows. When Noah finally fell asleep in Ethan's arms, Emma brought a blanket and covered him gently. Their eyes met. 2 souls who had been broken by time, finally finding their way back. I don't know if I can forgive you completely, Emma said softly. But for Noah's sake, we can start over. Ethan nodded, eyes glistening. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve that chance. Outside, the city lights flickered, and dawn crept quietly toward the horizon. For Emma, the long, lonely night of the past 6 years was finally ending, replaced by the first light of something new. Not a perfect family, but a real one.